Good evening. Welcome to Scubetv. We have a special guest with us today, Mr. Joshua Scott. He's running for Congress from the 32nd District in California. So, he's running on Republican Party ticket. So, welcome to the show, Mr. Joshua. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me on today.
Thank you. Thank you for coming, and we wish you all the best. And then we would like to know a little more about yourself. What your career, your education, your career, and then what made you to run for this position.
Right. So I grew up in Southern California. I'm a Los Angeles native, and I went to California State University, Long Beach, where I got a degree in political science. During time of my college education and a little bit after college, I had spent a total of about 5 years working in the legal industry. And post-college, I had originally planned on trying to go to law school and pursuing the legal field. But foreign policy really piqued my interest. There were a lot of things that I learned during college that I wanted to pursue further. And so I actually had the opportunity to go live and work in Tel Aviv, Israel. I was an intelligence analyst at a geopolitical risk consulting firm where I got to do a lot of pretty incredible work. I was an analyst where I got to pretty much determine what was going on in the given regions of where the clients were and do assessments, analysis, and recommendations on what was going on in the business world there, the political world, and keep the companies up to date on what they needed to know. And along with work, I got to participate in a pretty awesome program where I toured the state of Israel. I met with Arabs, Jews, Muslims alike, and learned a lot about the political situation, the businesses that go on, the scholastics, the religions, and just really kind of got an all-encompassing experience. And when I finished up with this program and I came back to the United States, I decided I really wanted to get involved. I wanted to have an impact on U.S. foreign policy, the U.S.-Israel relationship. And I found out some things that I didn't like about some of the representatives here in Los Angeles County. And I immediately got in contact with some candidates that were running for office, started working for their campaigns, and tried to do as much as I possibly could for the 2018 election cycle. And pretty incredible situation. We were at the California GOP convention just 1 month before the primary election in 2018. And I was informed that in District 32 in eastern Los Angeles County, the East San Gabriel Valley, the incumbent Democrat representative, Grace Napolitano, was running unopposed. She did not have any opposition in the primary election, meaning she would be unopposed in the general. And the people did not have a choice. And, like I told you, I wanted to have as much of an impact as possible on the 2018 election. I'm pretty passionate about what's going on right now. And so when I found this out and the opportunity was presented to me, to potentially make it onto the final ballot, to provide the people with a choice and have my own platform to advocate what I really believed in, I said it was the perfect situation for me. And kind of a cool thing, once I got myself onto the ballot after the primary election, I became the youngest congressional candidate in the nation in 2018, which was pretty awesome. And so in a very abridged 4.5, 5 month long campaign, we hustled, we got tons of support in the community, Democrats and Republicans alike. Got in touch with a lot of the local activist groups that immediately threw their support behind me. And next thing we knew, it was November, and we actually had the most successful Republican congressional campaign in all of Los Angeles County. So we didn't quite win. There's still a long way to go. Los Angeles is notably a pretty Democrat county, but we made a lot of progress, and we got a lot of support on both sides. And my supporters stuck with me all over the last year, and after some heavy consideration, we decided to move forward and go along with the 2020 campaign. And it's been the same story. We've gotten lots of support in the community, lots of groups, lots of individuals, people that are unsatisfied with their government. And in the 2020 primary election, we had another incredible showing, and we were among the top performers again. So we're really looking forward to see if we can really build on things this summer. Obviously, it's a little bit difficult right now with the COVID-19 situation going on, and people aren't exactly out and about. There's no shaking hands. I don't get to do as much door knocking as I'd like to, but we're still confident. We still have people reaching out to the campaign every day. We've held small private gatherings in a safe environment, and we're just going to keep doing what we can to keep getting my name out there and hopefully make a real change here in Los Angeles County in the 2020 election.
Let's hope for that. And I know, as you mentioned, Grace Napolitano, she has been the congresswoman for this district for almost 21 years now. and we can talk about that particular topic further down the line. I mean, before that, I mean, I would like to ask you one thing. Why is Israel important ally for the US, and every elections or every time, I mean, we partner with, we consider Israel as our ally. So why is it Israel so important for the US and our politics? Can you explain a little bit more? I mean, because you have studied the political science and also been to the Israel on an assignment. So I'd like to know a little more from you, please. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And, it definitely goes a lot deeper than just, democratic or our democratic values. It goes a lot beyond, our shared military interests in the Middle East. Both the United States and Israel have proven themselves in the modern era to be a beacon of peace, tolerance, and democracy. Although, both of our countries are imperfect, we've emerged as global leaders in the tech industry, in healthcare, and, fighting for peace throughout the world. And, one of the reasons I decided to get so heavily involved is, here as a conservative in Los Angeles County and, with the media and everything, you deal with a lot of similar attacks that the patriots in Israel deal with. There's a lot of opposition and a lot of forces that use a premise of delegitimization and undermining the concept of Zionism and the concept of having a home for the Jewish people in the Middle East. And, there's a lot of history that gets ignored in Israel. There's a lot of history that gets ignored in the United States. And, when you're there and you see that there's no such thing as apartheid, that the media likes to tell you about, there are Christians, Muslims, and Jews that live freely in Israel, freely in Judea and Samaria. And, there's a lot of people on both sides that want to see peace. And the issue mainly is that there's a constant narrative of delegitimization that comes from not just the regional Arabs, but the United Nations, but in Europe and in the United States. And it's a very well coordinated, well funded movement. You see a lot of the narrative and the propaganda is fueled by Iran in the West Bank and in Gaza. You have this narrative, this anti-Israel, anti-Semitic narrative that gets pumped into Gaza, gets pumped into the West Bank, gets pumped into the surrounding Arab nations. And what it showed me is that these groups don't care about peace. They don't want Palestinian or Arab prosperity or autonomy. All they want to do is delegitimize the state of Israel. And so my activism goes far beyond just, reciting the same talking points of how we have the same shared democratic values and military interests. The United States and Israel are two beacons of peace, tolerance, and democracy that need to be upheld and need to be fought for against such a well-funded and well-coordinated attack that we're seeing going on every single day right now.
Okay, thank you very much for your views on the Israel and the US relationship. That's hopefully things will work out in better interest of the US citizens. So then you also mentioned earlier that COVID-19 is kind of coming in every way for the knocking the doors and campaign and all those things. But at the same time, COVID-19 is gripping our world with the serious disease. So, what is your view on overall COVID-19 in the world, and also how the federal government is handling and how the local government is handling? So, and even locally, how is the situation in your county or your district? Very recently, California in the beginning, they were able to blunt the curve a little bit, and now all of a sudden it is going up and they are closing down. They're giving orders to close the restaurants in many of the counties in California. So what is your overall view on the COVID-19 and this crisis right now?
Right. So, the emergence of a global pandemic is obviously very frightening and very troubling. And as a leader, myself, I'm a candidate for office. I want to be in a position to hopefully calm the public and guide them through the situation. But unfortunately, my focus has gone from, trying to get us through this current situation. And I'm very troubled by the lack of consistency and the lack of good information coming out of the federal government, the state governments, and the local governments since the end of January, beginning of February, and March. In the very beginning, we were told that the virus is, it's not airborne, and people are not transmitting it to each other as easily, and that masks do not do anything. And then all of a sudden you have our elected officials, the people that we have elected to lead us, are telling us that masks are absolutely mandatory when you leave the house, and that all of a sudden the virus is being transmitted human to human, and that it's airborne. The CDC was putting out, these death numbers, but you have Dr. Birx, who's on the White House coronavirus task force, who told us that many of the deaths recorded are due to underlying conditions, and that a lot of these people did not actually die of the direct effects of the coronavirus. And then, here in California, we have my Governor Newsom, and then over in New York, you have Governor Cuomo. These are two of the largest states where the virus seemed to hit pretty hard. And while they're telling the citizens what they should and shouldn't be doing via very arbitrary and unenforceable policy, you also have them implementing policies where they're sending tens of thousands of COVID patients into nursing homes, where nursing homes are where many of our senior citizens are, and they're very at risk health-wise. And that resulted in over 40% of recorded COVID deaths here in the U.S. And here in Los Angeles County, although we've seen some troubling numbers, the troubling thing for me is the very, like I said, arbitrary way that the government is tried to enforce these policies. I've seen church pastors get fined and threatened with jail time for allowing their church to congregate and their people to come in and worship, while a couple weeks later, you have people rioting around churches and burning and damaging churches while they go completely unchecked and immune to the law. And so while I'd like to be able to focus on mitigating a global pandemic that's obviously very serious, the thing that's been really troubling for me and a lot of my supporters, a lot of bipartisan constituency in District 32, it has to do with people that are very, very troubled by what's come out of Governor Newsom's policies, what's come out of a lot of other local counties, other states, and just very inconsistent information about masks, about transmission, about death rates, about the number of deaths. And what it's really kind of come to is it seems like our government has become they're untrustworthy, and it's going to be down to leaders like myself that are able to kind of peel through a lot of the information being provided and kind of determine, what's really going on here. I'm here to stand up for your rights as Americans. To be quite frank, given all of the inconsistent information that's come out, I'm one of those people that is rather defiant about an elected official that wants to tell me that I must be wearing a mask when I'm in public, and these places are considered essential while these places aren't. So much inconsistency, and it's quite troubling to me, and a lot of us here in California, we have the suspicion that a lot of it has to do with political games. This is an election year, so a lot of politicians have been stigmatized that they play political games with everything, and I think that's kind of proving to be true with a lot of the ongoing social issues and narratives that we see here in 2020.
We got your perspective. I mean, we don't want to comment on it because it's purely because two parties, some of the federal level, different parties ruling, and they have their own perspective, and the Democrats have their own perspective. So I leave it to the people. I mean, it's up to them what they want to, the way they want to look at it, and take the way they thought is right for them. So moving on to another topic, this COVID-19 is also exposed another thing in our society or in our system, as the healthcare system. It's it's very fragile. I mean, when it comes to handling the COVID-19 cases, and we see, and that's one thing. The another thing is the cost of healthcare is also very high in this country. There are two things here. So what is your view, and what is that you are trying to? I mean, let us say if you get elected to the office. So what do you propose to bring down the cost of the healthcare, and how do you envision to improve the healthcare system in this country?
Right. So first of all, I want to talk about how the healthcare system operated during this time of COVID. It's unfortunate that the media really kind of blew things up and spewed lots of falsehoods surrounding our healthcare system. Like you saw, certain news outlets in America were posting videos that were not of emergency rooms and operating rooms that were not even in America. And there was this narrative that hospitals are being overrun and they were under-equipped. But the reality was that the federal government did a very good job in getting supplies to the hospitals our ventilator supply turned out to be absolutely vital in saving a lot of lives, and the ventilators made their way to every state, and they're even being given to other countries now that need assistance. So as far as the way the U.S. handled COVID, I have to say I'm actually pretty impressed with our healthcare system. You don't oftentimes see the U.S. healthcare system get any credit in the media because we aren't socialized and single payer like some of these other countries. But I think when, in terms of me and my ambitions to be in U.S. Congress, there are a lot of things that need to be revamped in our healthcare system, because that's one of the main nonpartisan issues really in American society. Healthcare costs are up, quality of care is not what it should be. And as a conservative, we talk a lot about bringing competition to the market, because when there's competition and choice, that tends to drive costs down. And with Obamacare, one of the main issues that came about was lack of choice and skyrocketing costs, skyrocketing premiums. You had many states that were paying up to 150% of premiums what they were paying previously. And I have to commend the Trump administration for removing the individual mandate that came with Obamacare. Now obviously, the whole idea of giving choice, knocking down state boundaries, and bringing competition to lower costs is a big conservative talking point. But one thing you don't see any politicians talking about, seemingly on either side, is the fact that the U.S. has a very strong insurance lobby and big pharma lobby. And going back to the 1940s, there was a measure put in place called the McCarran-Ferguson Act back in 1945. And what that did was it allowed the healthcare industry to be one of the only industries in America that is allowed to evade antitrust laws, which makes it so that they can collude and price fix. So it's obviously not just that classic conservative message of bringing competition to the market, knocking down borders and driving costs down, and hopefully driving quality up. But we also need to get rid of the big lobbying from insurance and big pharma, get the drug prices down, and get rid of actual laws in the United States that pretty much favor the healthcare companies and insurance companies over the consumer.
Gotcha. See, but I mean, if you look at the right now, the movement with the Bernie Sanders movement or the Green Party movement, I mean, they are all advocating for the single pay system. So, and also if you look at the across the border, I mean, the other side of the border, I mean, the Canada, where they have the single, I mean, universal health care for themselves, I mean, for everybody in the country. And they have done a better job, I mean, controlling the COVID, I mean, in their country. Yeah, it can be, I mean, because of less population and yes, I mean, we don't know the exact cause, I mean, why, but I believe the number of cases are low and number of deaths are also low. So do you think, I mean, is there any relationship of better management of the COVID and the universal health care in Canada, and which we should support the other movement which is happening in the US, which says like, I mean, single payer system? What do you think?
Like you mentioned with COVID, it's hard to determine because of all the numbers that come out, and then in relation to the population and whatnot. But if you look at Canada and a lot of the European countries that the Bernie Sanders supporters like to tout for their healthcare, I think it's kind of a hard comparison to make, because a lot of these states that have single payer healthcare also have a government that's able to determine what type of care that they get. For example, if you are a 90-year-old grandma that needs a hip surgery and you're on a single payer system, they can determine whether you're going to get that elected surgery or not. And they also, the quality of care in many of these countries are not ideal, and they actually don't measure up to the U.S. You see a lot of people that study and work overseas, they want to come to the U.S. to make advances in healthcare. Also, a lot of the problems with the single-payer, state-funded healthcare is wait times. Not only is the quality not as spectacular as a lot of these left-wing politicians like to make it out to be, but the wait times, the treatment that you get, it takes a while to get to. There's wait times at hospitals. And the quality of care is not what it's made out to be in this idealistic, college campus movement, mainstream media type thing. So, I'm not here to tell you that I've called the U.S. as a beacon. We're not quite perfect on healthcare, that's for sure. And healthcare debt is one of the main detriments to our society, and I'm here to stand up for that. but I'm not going to, go with this sparkly-eyed, idealistic way of saying we need to be like Europe and Canada and bring in single-payer socialized healthcare, because that's not going to bring quality of care higher in America. And I don't believe that, once taxes are factored in and everything, I don't think the costs are going to significantly go down. So I am going to stick to the conservative choice stance on healthcare, and kind of combating big pharma, legislatively, and getting rid of the laws that make us that they can evade antitrust laws. If we can stand up for the people that way, and go with the individualistic free market approach, I think that's a much better system than going with the single payer state funded healthcare.
Gotcha. Thank you very much for your views and the perspective on this. The next topic is the economy, and especially California, the place where you are. California is the 5th largest economy in the world, and you have a lot of innovation. happens in the California, and especially the northern part of California. And southern part of the California is also, LA is also a big place where you have the entertainment industry, the headquarters of the entertainment industry in the whole world. And other technological companies also you have in the Southern California. But at the same time, one side we see the money, one side we see the growth and all those things. But at the same time, we also see the other side of the world is like the cost of living is going up and the quality of life is not that great. And we also see many people leaving the state because of the cost of living and the quality of life. With all these things. So how do you see these two? Once the economy is growing up and the cost of living is going up, so what is that you see you would like to do if you get into the position to improve the quality of the life of the people in California, and especially your constituents, and improve their life? Yeah, especially the traffic and many. There are many factors for that fact. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, there's absolutely a lot that needs to be done in California. Obviously, we have a large economy, we have beautiful beaches, and big buildings and whatnot. But like you said, the cost of living is up, the quality of life is down. There's traffic, there's homelessness, and all of this needs to be addressed. First off, as far as individual financial situation, people are obviously moving out of the state, and I think the way that California can kind of fix itself economically to support businesses and individuals is to mirror what the Trump administration has done over the first few years of his presidency. Obviously, legislatively, his presidency has been complicated in battling with Congress, but via executive order, he brought in massive regulatory rollbacks that allowed a lot of businesses to come back to the USA, operate at cheaper costs, and pay their employees a lot more. And in California, we have incredibly high taxes, not just income and state taxes, but we also have many punitive taxes, such as the gas tax and others. Our businesses are absolutely crippled by regulations. There are many environmental regulations that don't actually have a positive on our climate, or a positive effect on our climate, and so many other burdensome costs that go on to businesses that cause them to move out of state. And that's one thing that damages the quality of life here in California. If you have many individuals and businesses that are forced to move out of state, there's not as lucrative of housing, there's not as lucrative of jobs to have, and that trickles down into education and housing. You have a lot of politicians that don't like to acknowledge the fact that having an insecure border and being a sanctuary state and not having a firm grasp on who's coming in and out of the country and who's residing in our states, because federal authorities are not allowed to address this situation and operate as they like to apprehend certain criminals in the cities. It creates for a very difficult situation. With homelessness, our state does not enforce vagrancy laws. So obviously, while we need to treat many of these people humanely, we need to get them triaged. We need to get them in a state of getting drug treatment. We need to get them job training, and we need to get them into a situation where they can be functioning members of society. But a lot of what California is just sort of there's a lot of fluff. We have our beautiful buildings and beaches, but there's not a lot that's being done for the people. There's a lot that's being done symbolically for the TV, saying, "Oh, look, we're fighting climate change. We're a beacon for refugees, and we have a lot more government-funded programs." But the reality is, as the reason costs are going up is because there's incredibly high taxes and regulations, and our housing market is destroyed by the fact that there's increasing rent control and no economic freedom. So if all of these can be addressed with conservative, small government, economic freedom-based policies, then California can actually be saved. And there's a lot of activists that are bringing forward these common sense policies right now. And if you approach any moderate, independent, Democrat, conservative, whatever in the community, they agree with a lot of what you have to say about economic freedom, about business freedom, about deregulating. But we go up against such a strong Hollywood influence. We have single party control in the state legislature, in the governor's office, and they have partners in the media, that push what they're saying. They push this message of big government control and dependency. And that is why California is in the spot that it is right now. It's a complicated issue, but at the same time, if you implement common sense policies, I see a very bright and amazing future for California, for immigrants and Americans alike. You know, we are the U.S., California, Los Angeles. We are a beacon of hope, but the reality is we have to empower the people through freedom and common sense based policies.
Gotcha. You brought in, homelessness topic in your when you're talking about the economy. I know the homelessness is a big issue in California, even other parts of the country. But California has more number of homelessness people, and what I learned from the other discussion is they said, because of the weather in California, many people, whoever is homeless, they try to move to California. That way, at least they can enjoy the weather. They can stay outside. When they're staying outside, they can. That's one factor probably. And other psychological issues are also, triggering the people to get on to become homeless. But recently, I think Governor Newsom, he has invested in, using an executive order. Looks like he has found a way to accommodate few of the homeless people in the motels or hotels and temporary shelters, created temporary shelters for them. So what do you say about that one? Is it a good move, or is it? I think it is going in a right direction, isn't it?
Right. So it's not a good move because that executive order that you just mentioned is the result of an elected official putting out a mandatory policy for the local municipalities, which is not how it's supposed to work. The local municipalities should be compelled and provided with solid guidance into how they can implement policies to improve the homelessness situation. And one thing I want to tell you about, this just happened a few days ago. A few Republican members of the California State Assembly brought forth a plan to independently audit the California state budget towards the homelessness issue, which the budget increases by literally hundreds of millions of dollars per year, and the issue has only gotten significantly worse. More and more money comes into it while the problem gets worse. In Los Angeles County, between 2018 and 2019, homelessness increased by 12%. And in my congressional district, in the 32nd district in the San Gabriel Valley, the issue increased by 24%. And we had these Republican state assemblymen. They brought an opportunity to independently audit the budget all those hundreds of millions of dollars, now billions, that go into the homelessness issue. The state assembly, which is completely controlled by Democrats, the vote happened and it failed by one vote. And the state assemblywoman that represents much of the San Gabriel Valley where I'm running for Congress, she abstained from the vote. So what I see a problem at the top. I see people in government that like to put things out there in the media that make them seem like they're so benevolent, that they pump money into a program, they post on social media talking about how we need to help this and do that. But the reality is there's money that's just disappearing, and it's not helping anyone. It's not helping the homelessness. It's not helping business owners or property owners. And what we need to dig into all of these major California programs, like you talked about, fifth largest economy in the world, and all of that money is being invested back in allegedly to the people, but evidence shows that it's not being invested into the people. And one of the reasons I support that independent audit is because in 2018, the state lobbied heavily against Proposition 6, which called to repeal the state's recently implemented gas tax from 2017. And that gas tax brought the state $5.2 billion of revenue per year. And they swore that that revenue would be put directly into road and transportation infrastructure development. And it's already been proven that much of that money has been reappropriated and not gone to what it was promised to. So we have a major problem in the California state government where there's single party control. It's completely controlled by Democrats. And they virtue signal to the media about what they're pumping money into, about who they're helping. But the reality is money's disappearing. American citizens are not being put to the forefront. And it's a major problem that we need to dig into each of these programs and find out where the money's going and find out how we can actually help the people.
Gotcha. I see that when you've been talking about, California government is controlled by the Democratic Party, and even your current constituency is also run by, represented by Democratic Congresswoman for 21 years. But what I see it is, I know some people decide that they need to have term limits on these positions that may help. But at the same time, other side of argument is, the elections are actually are there to check the performance of the politician or officer. So in the when the elections are, they check for the performance of the either party or an officer or a politician or representative. So but they have been winning it continuously. So that means they should be doing good, and the people are liking it and they're voting them. Isn't that? What do you say from this theory? We think as an outsider, we think that they are doing well. That's the reason they have been getting elected. So probably nothing wrong with them.
Right. Like you said, people get elected, and then next thing you know, term after term, they keep getting reelected, and that's a result of a lot of factors. One is voter apathy, California and beyond. You have a lot of people who don't know who their representative is. I'm going to be perfectly honest with you. It was up until just a few years ago, I knew who my congressman was, knew who my state assembly member was. And that's because, the American people, there's hundreds of millions in us, and we're just kind of lulled into this thing where, if you're a Republican, you vote Republican. If you're a Democrat, you vote Democrat. And that's one of the reasons why we have this situation in California. It's a heavily Democratic state. And when the only little blurbs that people see from politicians are these really nice, benevolent-looking policies that say, "Hey, we're going to give you healthcare, we're going to give you citizenship, we're going to make it so that your education, your college tuition's covered." It all sounds like these really, really nice things, and that's why they call it virtue signaling. But the reality is, when you look into big government programs, they're not working for the people. The quality of these programs are significantly less than what they could be if we were allowed freedom of expansion to make different programs with different qualities, different opportunities. And also the fact that that these politicians don't really present themselves. They go on interviews in the media a couple times a week where they talk about things on the surface, but we don't really have a method or an avenue of getting face to face with our politicians and our elected officials and hearing direct explanations for very consequential policies that are put forward. So, like you said, the whole concept of career politician and lobbying for them and term limit, it is a complicated issue because like you said, they keep getting elected. That's their thing. And so it's kind of hard to pin it strictly on them because the voters are choosing them time after time. So, voter apathy has to get fixed. We have to get away from this whole single party thing. We have to have a presence in the Republican Party. Obviously, I'm ripping on these Democrat politicians that I think are putting in bad policies, but the Republican Party, California, does not have a significant presence. Our message is often demonized by the media. And our activists are very often sheepish, especially in the area of Donald Trump. No one likes to come out and be a vocal supporter of President Trump because you see people get accosted and assaulted in the street. So there are a lot of facets that need to go into reforming California, and I'm absolutely not just going to say this is a fully Democrat problem. There's a very large system at hand that needs to be addressed. But I really do believe that me and my conservative, constitutional, freedom-based approach to Southern California and the federal government, I really do believe that will be the best thing for the people of the San Gabriel Valley and the people of the rest of the country.
Thank you very much. And you also brought in the citizenship and the immigration in your talk. So So, what is your view on the immigration in the U.S.? I mean, we have multiple things. I mean, illegal immigration, and we have illegal immigration, and we also see, some kind of pressure on the legal immigration system also from the federal government. So, what is your overall opinion on the immigration?
Right. So it's difficult, here in Southern California because, like I mentioned, you have a big Democrat Party and a media that works alongside their narrative that makes it so that a conservative like me that says we need to secure the border and reform our immigration system, we get labeled as racist and anti-immigration. So first of all, we need to overcome that narrative and talk about the fact that securing our border and building a barrier and having extra personnel down there has to do with not just illegal immigration, but human trafficking, weapons trafficking, and drug trafficking. We have an opioid crisis in the United States. We have unprecedented human trafficking where people get thrown into prostitution, people get raped a long way to the southern border. President Trump recently announced a while back that there are young girls that have to take birth control while they're being brought through the deserts of Central America because there's such a high chance of them being raped on the way to the border. And our politicians, instead of being accountable about those types of things, they just stand there and virtue signal to us, saying that we're being more humanitarian by keeping our borders open and porous because there are people that need help. And there absolutely are, but the reality is there are about 700,000 illegal crossings per year. And that, to put it in perspective, that represents about one congressional district, one congressman in the House of Representatives, and one electoral vote. That's horrible for our country, horrible for our job situation, horrible for our economy. So once we actually get the border secured and we get this issue mitigated, then we can actually bring on a new asylum system, a new refugee system, new opportunities for people that want to come here and work and get educated. And when the system's streamlined and become more efficient and not bombarded, then we actually are we're a beacon of hope. We're a beacon of opportunity, and I want people to have that opportunity to come here and work. You meet immigrants every day with accents that are here living a better life, and they're blessed, and I'm so proud that we have a country that offers that. But like I said, the concept of securing the border is very politicized, and those of us who are for securing the border are stigmatized by the media. And furthermore, California, a border state, spends over $25 billion per year on the illegal immigration issue, whether it's providing health care to illegal immigrants or housing, education benefits, or whether it's law enforcement dealing with the criminal aspects that come along with it. So I am pro-legal immigration. I am pro people coming here for a better opportunity. But the reality is our system is so incredibly broken. It has an effect on our jobs. It has an effect on our economy. It has an effect on taxes. It has an effect on healthcare. It has an effect on homelessness. And it's about time our politicians stepped up, acknowledged this, and put their face into the wind and confronted the media narrative and actually implemented some America First policies.
Thank you very much for your perspective and the views on the immigration in the U.S. side. So you and
there you go. Lost
yeah,
for a second.
It was yeah. So yeah, during the COVID-19, we got another social issue came up. I mean, which is the Black Lives Matter is going on. So what is your view on the Black Lives Matter, the movement, and in general? I mean, what are your views and what do you say about the Black Lives Matter right now?
Right, so that's another issue that's complicated to discuss because when you take a certain stance, all of a sudden you're labeled as something by the media and by people that oppose you politically. But the reality is, I believe that a significant portion of Americans, including myself, believe in justice for all. There are absolutely injustices in America that occur daily. We all have friends that are black, brown, yellow, white, green, whatever, that have gone through some pretty horrible things, and you hear about it and you want to make sure your country's better. But the reality is there is no evidence that America is embedded with systemic racism, which means a system that is woven with white supremacy that is designed to promote the straight white male and undermine anybody else that's brown, black, female, gay, straight, whatever. And I absolutely reject that premise. If you look at numbers of police killings, police apprehensions, police violence, the police have actually done an incredible job over the last few decades of reducing their rate of use of force per interaction with citizens. The disparities that come with police killings. There are about 1,000 a year, and I think all of us would like to see that reduced significantly, despite who was a problem and who wasn't. But if you look at the numbers, there are no significant racial disparities in those numbers about police killings. And with the statement "Black Lives Matter," of course Black Lives Matter. I'm not going to be one of those people that plays devil's advocate and I want to come here and say all lives matter, because Black Americans have dealt with things that no other people in American history have dealt with, and that plight should be addressed individually. But the organization itself, Black Lives Matter, is very anti-white racist. They're anti-American, and they're outspokenly Marxist. They do not believe in anything that America stands for. They believe in getting rid of the nuclear family, a mom and dad raising kids to grow up in a free society. That's one thing of many that they want to dismantle. They want to abolish the police, which is absolutely absurd. As I said, our police have become, I believe that they're peace officers. They do an amazing job, and while no one's perfect, our departments around the country have proven year after year that they're doing a great job. And while, yes, there are improvements that can be made, I 100% stand with our police officers, as I do most public servants that are putting themselves out there as first responders. And another thing about Black Lives Matter is that if you go to their website and you click on donate, it takes you to actblue.com, which is the Democrat Party's main fundraising super PAC. So when you donate to Black Lives Matter, that little percentage of commission that Act Blue gets, they're putting that straight into Democrat Party campaigns. And it's unfortunate. You can look at a lot of progressive causes that, show themselves as these benevolent, nice things in the USA. The Women's March, for example, feminism. Feminism's a good thing. It means equality for women. No one denies that. But the reality is the founders of the Women's March, like Linda Sarsour, Tamika Mallory, their ideological roots are embedded in anti-Semitism. They're pro-terrorist, they're pro-Hamas, they're pro-Hezbollah, and that goes back to my passion for fighting for the U.S.-Israel relationship. You have these groups that have come over here designed as progressive causes, like the Women's March and like Black Lives Matter, when what there really are is anti-American Marxist left-wing movements that are meant to delegitimize the very principles that America represents. And I will absolutely not stand for that. So, by me making these statements, which are absolutely true, I'll face backlash by some in politics, some in the media, people on social media, because they want to make it seem like I'm saying that the concept of the phrase Black Lives Matter is illegitimate, which is not what I'm implying. But I think that these groups like Black Lives Matter and Women's March are using innocent Americans that do believe in justice and equality as a vehicle to traffic in their hatred. And that's one thing that I'm going to be standing against for as long as I'm involved in politics.
Gotcha. Okay. During this same time, this particular movement is creating another, bringing another topic up, which is defunding the police and repealing the qualified immunity to the police. And some police officers are also saying that it is valid. That's what they say. Some officers are saying. So what are your views on qualified immunity and the defunding the police? I know in every community you have a good and bad, and the police has been very good in many societies and many communities. They help many people, no doubt about it. Most of the police officers are very nice. But there are a few bad apples. In every department, every society will be getting a black mark to them, the whole community. So I would like to hear more about your views on defunding the police and repealing the qualified immunity.
Right. So to be simple about defunding the police, I'm absolutely against that 100%. Like I said, I'm a big supporter of our police officers. And as far as the numbers that I've seen from the last few years, there's no reason to defund the police. But of course, the bad apple argument, it's hard to make the bad apple argument because, in a system where these people are trusted with our lives, where they're trusted figures of authority and they're handed guns. So it's horrible to even see just a couple bad apples out of many. So that's something that needs to be fixed. Some of these social justice movements have they've brought about plans where they want to bring community boards to supervise the police and be a part of investigations into killings of civilians. and other acts of violence. And I'm absolutely for holding each and everyone accountable. But the problem with repealing the qualified immunity, this is being lobbied for by these very same anti-American organizations that I was talking about a minute ago, and they want to have just an open right to sue the departments on a large scale, based on a fallacy, based on a concept of systemic racism that doesn't exist. So I'm not ready to support that right now, and I don't think any other politician should. Now, there's plenty of changes that can be made, and if someone wants to sit down and justly talk about ways that we can make our community safer and make our police officers and departments more accountable, I'm absolutely all ears, and there needs to be training implemented every year, and it needs to be adjusted every year to make it so that there are virtually nobody being assaulted or violated or killed. We're all people here, and we're all for equality. I don't want to see anybody killed, even if they're misbehaving or committing crimes. But the reality is, based on what I've seen in total from police departments throughout the nation and the numbers that come with it, I don't see racism, and I don't see a bunch of agents of the state, like they say, that are coming out and killing people in the streets.
Okay. Coming back to another topic, which is the important topic in the whole country, the education system. Education is very important for everybody. That's one, which will help, some people from poverty to come out of the poverty. And also the California is another thing. Another important thing in California is a developed country, state, and advanced state with the technology and the money and all those things. But at the same time, if you look at the school systems in California, again, it's not in the top numbers. It's somewhere in the middle or even below the middle level. That's one thing. So, poor state of the education system in California. So, what are your views about how to improve the education system, overall education system in the U.S. and especially in California?
Right. So,
it's not part of your role. Yeah.
Yeah. So, everyone deserves an opportunity at education. I talked about people coming here for a better life. One of the things they want to do is come here and get educated. And so I'm all for the opportunity to get educated. And I think one of the reasons why a lot of our public schools have become so poor in quality, is that you go to the school that's mandated based on where you live. There's maps drawn up. And so there's no school choice. You live in an area and you're going to that specific school. So it kind of comes back to what we talked about with healthcare. There's no real incentive or competition for these schools to be top notch. Now, the argument about school choice that the Trump administration seems to be putting forth, I like, because if you get tax credits where you can apply them to the school that you like, that puts in the curriculum you like, or with a charter school that isn't pushing sex ed and teaching little 7-year-olds about methods of having sex, which is actually something that the California state legislature is putting forth. So school choice and charter schools for parents that don't agree with a lot of the things that are going on in our California education system, I think those are things that can absolutely improve it. It really does seem like the pro-freedom, pro-opportunity, pro-choice way of moving forward in California. It does seem like quite a way to fix a lot of our issues, but education is a tough one because we have millions of people that we do need to be getting a quality education each year, and with the amount of money we put into our public schools, hopefully that budget's another thing we can look into to making sure all of the money is going into making the quality as high as it possibly can be.
Hopefully things will improve in the education system over a period of time. Let's hope for that. And last topic for today is being in California and also in the southern part of the California, where you have a lot of wildfires. The areas you get every year some wildfires. So do you think the climate change is real, or is it kind of man-made? And what is your opinion? So what do you think will you be able to do if you are elected to this position in the Congress?
Right. So the idea of climate change is absolutely a real thing, and us as humans with a massive industry around us, we should be working as hard as possible to keep our world clean. I live a few miles from the beach, and I love the beach. I want the oceans to be clean. I don't want them to be littered with plastic, and I don't want to look up and see a bunch of smoke and haze in the sky. But the reality is the policies that have been put forth by California Democrats and the left-wing environmental movements are not efficient. They put in these regulations that put California businesses completely under, so that there can be a place where the government all of a sudden props up their own industry to take over, and the regulations that are put in place don't actually have any significant effect on the environment. You're not seeing a lot of these regulations put in place actually lowering global temperatures. They're not reducing problems with air quality. One of the main issues that we saw in the Obama administration was putting us into the Paris Climate Accords, which would put us and other countries investing hundreds of trillions of dollars into a program that would barely reduce the rate of the global temperature increase by, I think it was like 0.1 or 0.2 degrees Celsius by the year 2100, and many of those effects wouldn't start to take place until 2030. So I think a lot of the climate alarmism that you see in the United States is rooted in this left-wing cause that wants to implement big government policies and essentially take away our business's freedom. So, of course, I'm absolutely for clean air and clean energy. I'm a conservationalist, but the left-wing way of climate alarmism and putting in these big government regulations that are destroying businesses and jobs and sending them straight to China, I'm 100% not in favor of. And you mentioned the fires. One of the reasons that these fires spread so quickly was that our forests hadn't been properly deforested by our parks and rangers. And a lot of that has to do with lobbying from the left. So there's really unfortunate circumstances, and then there was also the issue of PG&E, the electric company, having an unaccountable system up in Northern California that involved starting the fires. And it's interesting. All of a sudden, once the Trump administration announces that they're not going to be providing federal funds to a state like California, that's a sanctuary state and provides illegal refuge to illegal aliens and doesn't allow federal law enforcement to have jurisdiction here, then all of a sudden you see them asking for massive federal bailouts in these alleged emergencies and climate emergencies and fires. So I think a lot of us need to step back from the whole alarmist narrative and kind of look at the facts of everything going on. And there are ways to be pro-environment, while there's also ways to be pro-environment and pro-conservation and pro-business and pro-job at the same time.
Thank you very much for sharing your views and the perspective on all these topics. Do you have any message or message to the viewers or audience or their constituents, please?
Yeah, so one thing I've been posting a lot about on social media, saying to constituents of District 32, saying to constituents or personal friends and family that I have, is stay focused. Because a lot of things right now are being hyper-sensationalized by media and by politicians, whether it's COVID, whether it's dealing with the arbitrary and unenforceable policies from our local governments, and whether it's the ushering in of anti-American sentiment in these left-wing groups like Black Lives Matter and Women's March. What it wants to do is take away our focus from issues at hand, like ensuring that we as Americans have our freedoms, that our movements are not being traced by the state. We need to make it so that the state can't tell us, where we're allowed to go, where we're not allowed to go, how this church is not allowed to hold a worshiping session, but a bunch of rioters can come burn their property and not be held accountable. There's this type of corruption and this type of consistency absolutely needs to be addressed, and that's why I truly believe that these hyper-sensationalized narratives are being put out there to distract us during an election year and to pollute our minds. And my message to the people is stay focused, stay strong, and really pay attention to the issues concerning the freedom and prosperity of your family, and stay loud, because this is an important year. And I think if everyone sticks together and stays focused, we're going to see a lot of people like me get elected that are pro-freedom, and you're going to see President Trump get reelected in a landslide, and we're going to put an America First agenda forward, and you're going to see a different America that where people are proud. It's going to be awesome.
Thank you very much for coming on the show, Mr. Joshua Scott, and I wish you all the best in your elections.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Have a nice evening.